Hey folks, and welcome to my guide on Kingshot's newest competitive alliance event, the Tri-Alliance Clash. It feels sort of like a mashup of Swordland Showdown, Alliance Championships, and the board game Risk. This event provides all sorts of rare rewards, as well as a special currency which lets you buy additional rare rewards. And while Tri-Alliance Clash is very fun, it can also be confusing. And even if you understand the basics, the battlefield is constantly shifting as you and your multiple opponents make split-second strategic and tactical decisions. To help make sense of all of this delightful chaos, I put together an in-depth guide that breaks down every facet of this game mode and provides tips for you and your alliance to get the advantage over your opponents. To structure this video, first, I'll unpack the fundamentals and key game rules to consider to maximize your rewards. Then I'll talk about the pre-game matchmaking and strategic implications of it. And after that, I'll walk you through each of the major phases of the match. In each one of these, I'll help you understand what's going on, how the strategy shifts as you enter each phase, and what new tips and tricks become relevant to maximize your performance. So let's start out with the fundamentals. You will compete against two other alliances with the sole objective of scoring the most points. And you gain these different points all through some variation of battling for and capturing points of interest on the map. You exert control by sending 3 squads of heroes with troops around the map to auto-battle at each point of interest. This leaves you to strategically manage your army's locations, condition, and timing. Moving them around the map and healing them requires energy, which must also be managed. And you'll also need to coordinate with your alliance to maximize the impact your armies collectively have. Importantly, winning does not require controlling any specific building or territory on the map. Certainly some locations are more valuable than others, and we'll get into that shortly. However, it's important to have this distinction clear in your mind since it opens up more strategies to win. Similarly to Swordland Showdown, rewards granted are based on both your alliance's performance as well as your individual point total. And these two things are not earned the same way. So the actual optimization problem we're trying to solve with this guide is how to maximize your rewards. And your alliance winning is only one lever to do that. So let's break down this reward structure. First off, each alliance will send 2 separate legions to compete, but only the results of Legion 1 impact the alliance ranking rewards. So there is generally an incentive to make your Legion 1 team stronger, but it's only a minor share of the total rewards you can get from this event, as you'll see in a moment. And whether you compete in Legion 1 or 2, there are additional awards determined by your individual match. Just like in Swordland, whether your team wins or loses determines which award bracket, and then your rewards within that bracket are determined by your personal point total. The difference here is that there are 3 brackets, one for each place instead of the simple winner and loser bracket like in Swordland. And the rewards are actually pretty helpful since they include a lot of rare items and some troop training speedups to help with KVK points. And there is even further emphasis on personal points in Tri-Alliance Arena, because there is also individual rank rewards based on your personal point total. In addition to a limited frame, you get some orange shards and boosts to your hero gear. And this leaderboard is shared across teams within the same legion, and someone can take the top spot even if they're on one of the losing teams. So how do we get both types of points? Well, let's start with alliance points, which come from building capture. Different buildings are worth different amounts of alliance points, and the points accrue over time for the alliance that has control over them. The buildings worth more points will tend to be in more accessible places for enemies, with the notable exception of the headquarters. You'll also notice in the Temple of Tides and the Garrison that there is a line in the description that says the alliance holding them at the end of the battle will gain additional points. At the time this video goes to publication, I think there may be a bit of a bug that's preventing the Garrisons from adding to the final point total. You can see in my match how the team that held the Temple of Tides and 2 Garrisons at the last second got 50,000 points, which is supposed to be the point value for the Temple of Tides alone. And the team that held 1 Garrison had no change in points. I also looked at footage that other viewers shared with me and confirmed this happened in those matches as well. I'll post a comment below if I see this addressed in the future, But as of right now, the Garrisons do not seem to be providing extra point totals, so adjust your strategy accordingly. There's also another rumor I've seen going around in some guides that says you get a 50,000 point bonus if you're the first team to capture the Temple of Tides. Not only is this not in the building description like the end of match point gain is, but you can see the video here of this alliance capturing it and not receiving any such bonus points. They have about 340,000 points before the first capture, and about 341,000 points immediately thereafter. There are other reasons you may want to be the first to capture it when it's available, but I do not believe that this is one of them. And one other minor note about the buildings, please be aware that the terms Cluster of Ruins and Ruins as they appear in the rules here are not actually what they're called in the battle map itself. In-game, the ruins are actually called altars, and the clusters of ruins are actually called shrines. And I'll be referring to them as such later in the video while we look at the actual in-game battle footage. Finally, although not in the rules documentation, buildings like shrines and altars also have special effects for battles that take place in them. Essentially, they help the Alliance based on that side from getting overrun with stat bonuses and modifications to enemy energy consumption. I won't list them all out here, but you can check them out in-game by selecting the icons under the building window. For personal points, you gain points from combat. There isn't a clear description anywhere in the game, but here's what I've been able to back into by reviewing point total changes in my own score from my recordings. Defeating an enemy army, including the non-player character or NPC guards, provides 3,500 points. If the army you defeat is not at full strength, you appear to get some sort of prorated point gain based on their remaining health, but I was not able to confirm the exact math in reviewing the footage. And if your army is defeated by the enemy, you gain 1,500 personal points. I did not identify any other way to earn personal points, including sitting at buildings while they earn alliance points. So this implies that the strategy to maximize your personal point total means not shying away from offensive combat. It means being less willing to wait for the fight to come to you, which almost always means a stronger player will engage you, since it leaves the choice of conflict up to your opponent. And it can also be helpful for weaker players to move around the map and target enemy NPC guards if they are at risk of not making the point minimum. So now you can see how these sort of actions may not be the most helpful for overall team positioning and point scoring. And this is the tension you'll need to work through in order to maximize your rewards and help yourself and your alliance overall. There are other important rules you should familiarize yourself with, but I will address most of them as they come up during the match. However, there are a couple important things worth pointing out. First, you can leave the battle like in Swordland and trigger the same 12-minute cooldown time to re-enter. However, unlike Swordland Showdown, there's no real reason to do this since there is a quick way to heal your troops in the match. And in fact, if you're not present at the very end of the match, during the tally phase, then you do not get any rewards. This is very different than Swordland, so do not leave the match if at all possible. And another one worth pointing out is that march speed and deployment capacity bonuses are not effective in the battlefield. So unfortunately, the Mighty Bison skill will not work. Nor will the movement speed bonus from the Grizzly Bear. That said, the other combat pet bonuses will work just fine. To enter, you also can't have any troops deployed, your city can't be under attack, nor can your barricade be on fire. So be mindful of this as you approach the event time. Now that we've covered the foundation, let's talk about preparation for the event itself. Just like in Swordland Showdown, players will vote so that their alliance leaders can best understand which times allow which players to attend. And then there's a second registration phase for players to actually opt in to either Legion 1 or Legion 2 matches. In my Swordland Showdown guide, linked below in the description, I spent a lot of time thinking about how alliances can take advantage of the matchmaking to get a more favorable matchup. Fortunately or unfortunately, Tri-Alliance Clash does not give as much information about what is counted in matchmaking other than a single line that says soldier power is not included. To me, this implies it is based on total power rating exclusive of the troop power line item, meaning things like Oasis Island decorations that provide combat stats are not counted in matchmaking since they do not add to account power totals. but it's impossible to test. Also in Swordland, there's a line that says it only takes into account the top 20 players' power. Meanwhile, there's no such line in Tri-Alliance Clash. If it does not take this into account, this actually provides more opportunity for an older alliance to send an incomplete roster and get weaker but more numerous opponents. Again, it's nearly impossible to conclusively test, but at least in my sample size of one match, our low member Legion 2 matchup resulted in both an opponent with similar members in total power, as well as an opponent with many more members in similar overall power. And as expected, the team with less power per member came in last. So if you're in an older alliance, then feel free to experiment here with a 15-member sign-up to sandbag your power total if you want. However, be mindful that there's a possibility where you can get no suitable matchups and auto-advance, which will default to you only getting the second place reward bracket, so it is not without risk. Most importantly though, if you sign up, show up. Otherwise you made your alliance's opponents stronger. Obviously real life comes first, but just keep this in mind when signing up if you think you likely won't be able to attend. It's actually safer not to sign up. Another important consideration of the match preparation is team selection. In this game mode, you'll be commanding 3 armies at once, and you determine the hero composition of them. You cannot modify the number or composition of the troops, as it is an even split of 100,000 of each troop type for every army. That is why I said the Mighty Bison ability does not work here. However, you can still strategize a bit based on the heroes you send. If you're a free-to-play player or in the early game, then simply send your strongest heroes. I personally do not find it helpful to try to split up your power evenly between 3 marches, since you're unlikely to turn a losing army into a winning one. Instead, you'll probably end up not really being able to win with any of your armies, so keep at least one main march stacked with your strongest heroes and equipment. If you are a significant spender, or have just been playing the game a long enough time such that you have built many orange heroes, now you get a chance to be rewarded for this investment. You have options. I would consider specializing your teams for offense and defense if possible. For example, if you're in Generation 3, you can make a defensive-oriented team with Eric, Jaeger, and Hilda, as well as an offensive-oriented team with Amadeus, Marlin, and Petra. This will give you a significant advantage when defending key buildings from enemies. This is especially so because offensive widget hero abilities do not apply in solo marches in Expedition mode, while defensive widget abilities do. And in Tri-Alliance Clash, all simulated battles are solo marches, not rallies. For example, here's a battle report from a battle where I attacked with Petra, who would normally boost attack with her special ability. A +2 widget should yield a 5% attack special bonus line item. But here it is nowhere to be found, only the pet abilities and consumables I used. So when taken together, this implies that a well-structured defensive hero formation will have a significant advantage when holding a building due to this asymmetry. So if you specialize an army for defense, it can make a big difference in your ability to hold the Temple of Tides or other key choke points, even against other whales. And no matter what hero setup you use, make sure to use pet buffs. And I would even argue battle consumables, particularly if you have extras from Sanctuary or Fortress rewards. This is true for both spenders and free-to-play players. You do not need to lock in your bonuses on the hero selection window like you do in Alliance Championship. It does not take a snapshot of that moment, but will update those heroes in real time, even if the bonuses expire during the match. So save your bonuses and use them close to match time so they are active for the full hour. Finally, this event is well suited to having everyone participate in voice chat on Discord or a similar service. Coordination to protect key points and swing forces around as needed will provide significant advantage over opponents who are not doing this. If you go this route, try to have predetermined raid callers like in an MMORPG raid. And however you choose to coordinate your team, you can make it slightly easier by electing 2 players who are not rank 4 or 5 in your alliance to be Legion commanders. They will temporarily have the Tri-Alliance abilities of rank 4 or 5 players during battle, namely designating players in your alliance as captains. I'll go more into captains later in the video when we discuss energy. Okay, time for the match to start. The battle is broken down into 4 phases, with an instantaneous tally phase at the end. Let's dive into the preparation phase. But first, 2 quick thank yous are in order. First, I want to thank 2 subscribers, Stole Your Sweet Roll, who goes by Spicy Poison Ivy in Kingdom 253, and Mugawara in Kingdom 444, who sent in footage of their gameplay for me to incorporate into this video. This was key to allowing me to get this guide up after only 1 appearance in game. Secondly, a shout out to all of my Sloth Squad members for their continued support in helping me make guides like this one. Check out the link below if you're curious about the membership program. This preparation phase is a short one. You have 3 minutes to get a sense of your surroundings and check out your opponents. You'll see many lanes in front of you with different potential routes to capture. Ideally, you have groups of players that are balanced across certain lanes to make sure your forces are divided appropriately and not leaving an area exposed or underpowered. Consider having your whales go in different directions with your next tier of strongest players supporting them. When the path splits, you may want to have some predetermined players or teams peel off as needed to defend key choke points. Specifics will vary alliance to alliance, but again, having a raid caller and a voice chat will help manage this a bunch. So before the action gets started, this time lets you scope out your opponents a bit more. At any point in the match, you can select the banners at the top of the screen and see the current status of each opponent, including how many players are in the match. This information may help you strategize on the direction you'll want to send your troops when combined with what you know about the opponent's relative strength from the pre-match screen. And as the 3-minute preparation phase expires, the match truly begins with the 17-minute Seize and Conquer phase. This is the actual start of the battle, and here your objective is to capture the neutral buildings on your side as quickly as possible. Certain buildings, for example garrisons, will be unavailable until the next phase. You will immediately start out by moving to capture neutral buildings. The way combat works is automated between attacker and defender, and each battle plays out over 10 seconds. All combat is one-on-one, and additional armies queue up for the next battle, which will continue in combat sequentially. The winning army drops to the bottom of the queue on its side, and the losing army is expelled. If a player army loses, it's back to the headquarters for them. But if the NPC army loses, it will regenerate over time, and will eventually fight on behalf of the building owner when it comes back later. And don't get too excited about that last part, as the NPC armies are not really that strong compared to players, but their main purpose is to add bulk to your defenses, so it takes longer for enemies to capture. Each 10 seconds an enemy spends facing an NPC is 10 extra seconds for your alliance to bring in reinforcements. You can also see at a glance below the building UI how many marches are on each side, as well as a bar that shows the total number of troops. Beware that this says nothing about the actual strength per troop or army, which could be radically different than the visual of what the bar provides at a quick glance. But the main thing in this phase is that you want your alliance to build up tempo as quickly as possible. This is because each building adds to your point generation total, which can get you off to an early lead. And if you capture all the buildings on your side quicker than your opponents do, you can then take some buildings from the enemy's side before they reach them while reinforcing key choke points. Additionally, some of the buildings you capture will allow your alliance leaders to assign additional captains, increasing energy generation for your team faster. And now is a good time to talk about energy management. Every movement action with your troops, so not combat itself, requires some sort of energy to commence. You gain it over time passively with a bonus recovery rate for players designated as captains. And you spend energy in the following ways: moving marches to a new location, also called deploying; conscripting marches, that is, healing or replenishing injured marches with new troops away from your headquarters. You can only do this at a captured building not under combat, and depending on where those troops are positioned or how injured they are, it might be better to dismiss them and start with a new march from the headquarters. But this is an interesting strategic option if they are well positioned and no longer under threat. There's also the option to advance or retreat. If your side has more than 5 armies queued up at a single battle location, you can spend energy to move them back to safety or forward to attack the next target in the lane. Otherwise, they'll be stuck at the location until all battles in queue are resolved. And there's also the option to instantly revive. If your march has been defeated, you can pay energy to skip the wait period for them to regenerate and spawn back the army immediately. You're essentially trading off extra energy to get the march back quicker. So depending on the current battle conditions and how much energy you have stored up, this could be either a good or a bad choice. So use this ability wisely. But the bottom line is, the more energy you have, the more tactical options your team will have access to at any given moment. And this means you'll want to make sure you are effectively using the energy generation bonus of the Captain's feature. So the way Captains work is that Alliance leadership can designate players to gain energy faster. The number of Captain slots you have is dependent on the number and type of buildings you have captured. However, one important thing that players tend to miss in the chaos of the battle is that not all Captain slots are created equal. For example, a Captain slot provided by an altar only yields an extra 15,000 energy per minute, while a shrine provides 45,000 energy per minute, and a Garrison slot provides an extra 60,000 energy per minute. To save you from having to scroll through every player's assignment and optimize, when you select a Garrison slot and see the list of players you can put in, you will see icons next to players who are currently in a Garrison slot. And the color here also tells you what the energy gain rate is. Blue is the basic 15,000 position, purple is the 45,000 energy position, and gold is the coveted 60,000 energy position. See how this setup is suboptimal since the gold crown is on a player with full energy, while a stronger player has no bonus due to a recent loss of another Garrison. Alliance leaders and Legion commanders need to be on the lookout for this sort of thing during the match as conditions continually change and buildings trade hands. The red indicator in the bottom right will alert you to open slots. At the same time, it's probably not ideal for everyone to be watching the Captain window, since it will cause a lot of uncoordinated shuffling and distract people from managing their own troops in combat. So ideally, 1 or 2 Alliance leaders or Legion commanders who really know what they're doing should be tasked with managing Captain roles. They will be best positioned to make sure there are not any wasted empty slots and that the right players are getting the right bonuses. In general, making sure your strongest players have continuously supplied energy will help them be more effective in winning the match. So now that we've discussed all the options at your fingertips for this phase, let's talk about a few strategic tips. This first one allows you to capture neutral buildings quickly, which will be a huge advantage. At the very beginning, you will likely see the following: a cluster of many armies on your side waiting for their turn to attack a few easy NPC guards. Well, don't forget that you can advance your troops through the battle to start capturing the next neutral building. Simply click on the next building in the path and select Advance. You will then be able to move your units forward to already begin the capture of the next building while the previous one is still underway. If everyone in your alliance knows to do this when it's available, then you will significantly increase the speed of capture of neutral buildings across your entire starting zone. This gives you more points quicker, more captain slots for energy gain, and a better position to invade your opponents before they can even react. And this will be a great way to kick off a virtuous cycle that'll increase the tempo of your side. And the next tip is that you can use this advance maneuver to back capture your opponents when you finally reach their front lines. Since people tend to naturally move their units to the front line, they may miss a back capture move in the chaos of the battle. See how these yellow players rush to the transit battle and go right through the title altar that is about to lose all of its neutral guards? A successful back capture not only cuts off reinforcements to the front line battle, but in this case allowed the capture of a bigger point prize far sooner while moving the point of combat in the lane closer into enemy territory. Just be careful doing this with too many players if the lane splits so you don't spread your forces too thin. And there's one other unique aspect of this first phase, which is that you cannot occupy the garrisons yet. The way the battle lanes are set up, this means you are blocked from reaching the transit hub in your own territory on the backside of your own garrison, and the same is true for your opponents. This presents a strategic opportunity to allow you to position a strong stack of marches right next to your opponent's garrison immediately before the garrison becomes active. This can allow you to make a big play on a high point value target at a key choke point in your opponent's territory. Just make sure your other opponent doesn't try to do it to you. Purple gets this advantage on red, red gets the advantage on yellow, and yellow gets it on purple. Just remember whatever side you are playing will be overwritten with the color blue. And this brings us into the 20-minute Garrison occupation phase. As I mentioned in the last tip, these garrisons now open up and provide a large benefit to your team. They are tied with the Temple of Tides and Headquarters, as generating the most points per minute. At 1,800 points per minute, that's the same as controlling 3 clusters of ruins, also known as shrines. Additionally, you get one of the gold captain slots that regenerates 60,000 energy per minute for each one your team controls. So this is a big deal to capture and defend. Capturing this from an opponent will really set them back, not only due to the point swing, but also because it's another major choke point located behind the opponent's transit hub. If you own this building, then your opponent has one less way to invade your territory. As this phase starts 20 minutes into the match, you should have a fairly clear idea of the relative power of the 2 alliances you are facing. This presents some interesting strategic opportunities. If one alliance is clearly dominant, you could try to message the weaker alliance and propose a truce to both attack the stronger player back. At the same time, you also get more rewards for second place versus third. So you might come out ahead attacking a player that's already vulnerable because they're defending their other front, rather than trying to draw the attention of the stronger player. Either way, it's a strategic judgment call, but your ultimate goal should be to maximize rewards coming out of the event. And winning first place is only one way to do that, which might not always be feasible. However it shakes out, one important tip at this phase is to look for undefended locations. As the battle continues, there will be so many things for each side to keep track of that vulnerabilities will appear. You may find locations underdefended or only with NPC guards, and this is a good chance to grow territory as well as earn easy personal points for defeating the NPC guards. Accordingly, you should pay close attention to how the front lines shift, especially between your 2 opponents. If one opposing alliance is losing territory to the other opposing alliance, you can imagine there is a significant buildup of troops at those front lines. This might leave places exposed on either of the 2 alliances' backlines where you could swoop in and grab a key building like a shrine or a garrison to hold that choke point, even if you aren't a whale. So always be on the lookout for these sorts of well-timed opportunities. Another tip to help you get to the right place in time is to use speed-ups. It might not be immediately apparent unless you look closely, but while your troops are marching toward a location, the twin arrows icon will appear on the right of the march. If you click on that, it will pull up the option to use speed-ups just like a normal expedition march. While it may not have made as much sense in the first phase, by now you'll likely have some troops needing to race all over the map to capture or protect a key building, especially after they've just respawned. There are no rechargeable speed-ups like in Swordland, so I don't recommend using this excessively unless you are a spender. But a selective use of 1 or 2 speed-ups at key moments could certainly change the battle outcome. And as this phase draws to a close, players who are watching the clock will naturally position themselves to make a play on the Temple of Tides as soon as possible, especially due to that untrue rumor I mentioned earlier that they get bonus points for the first capture. There is still some advantage to being first capture, which I'll get into in the next phase. But either way, there is the potential to outmaneuver your opponents here. In the earlier part of the phase, while those other players may be preoccupied with the newly unlocked garrisons, you could try to drive your stronger players to take the lower point central shrine located behind the enemy's twin transit hubs and block their route to the Temple of Tides. This can create a single choke point before they realize the implications. And by the time this is noticed, there may not be enough time to push back and make a clear path to the temple, since it will require capturing 2, maybe 3 buildings before troops can even be sent to the temple. But eventually, time will pass and you'll get to the temple onslaught phase, which takes up the last 20 minutes of the match. The temple is the most valuable piece of real estate in the entire match, not just because it gives the 1,800 points per minute, but also because it provides that 50,000 bonus points to the last alliance holding it at the end of the match. To put that in perspective, holding the temple for the entire 20 minutes that is available only provides 36,000 points. At the same time, the temple is really hard to capture if it is held by strong players. This is because all the while the defending team is constantly sending in a stream of reinforcements and defending NPCs are respawning to take up even more time. And for the rest of the match, there will be a lot of traffic at this location. So being able to get the temple and lock it down early is a huge advantage, even without that rumored first capture bonus. Therefore, there will most likely be a frenzy of everyone rushing to the center to capture the temple as soon as it opens. So we should dive into our first tip about temple timing. The temple comes with 10 NPC guards, and the player that defeats the last guard will win it for their team. So you don't necessarily want to be the first march there, you want to be the march that defeats the last guard, which gets a little more complicated to time since when a guard is defeated, the winning troop drops to the bottom of the attacking queue. Look at this battle for the Temple of Tides, and you'll see how the red player Wraith sent his 3 marches while there were 8 guards and 5 attackers. This put him in the 8th position in the list to take that last guard. Unfortunately, I just missed the timing of his 3rd march, or I would have taken it. But now let's pretend for a moment that Bushchook underneath him was on my team. In a situation like that, I could actually consider retreating my march from the Temple of Tides so that the queue would bump up 1 spot and Bushchook would get the winning capture. However, it just wasn't possible in this particular case. Now, another interesting aspect of temple timing comes after it is captured. All of the winning team squads transfer over to the defender queue and then proceed to battle other teams' attackers from both alliances. However, every time a new reinforcement comes, it prolongs the battle. I didn't see any official documentation on this, but all of the battles I observed in the recorded footage actually showed 5 seconds specifically for the Temple of Tides. So it is at least a little bit quicker here. And here's where it can get really interesting, because if the defending team has a powerful whale, then it potentially will take multiple marches to chip away at their health. Meanwhile, the whale is likely using energy for instant revives and speed-ups to get back quickly and resupply the garrison. Weaker players might also reinforce to add more bulk. And it can get really annoying, like in this case where the enemy whale was on his last march, but our whale had to wait for a lower strength yellow player to get defeated before he could even battle. And unfortunately, this made the difference of us being able to capture the temple or not, because the whale was able to send a reinforcement in time. So if you're trying to stop a specific opponent that might be in first place from capturing the temple from your other opponent, one additional strategy you could use is to simply clog up the attacking queue with weak marches to sandbag it. Now, if you're trying to capture the temple from an opponent, one tip I want to tell you about is the battle speed up. I say want to because in all the footage I reviewed, I couldn't actually see it used successfully. The in-game description reads that if there are 5 attackers and defenders at the same location, then it will make all battles take 1 second. The cost is steep when you go to use it. It costs 5,000 gems. However, it also seems that there is some sort of limit to the amount of times it can be used. I say this because footage sent in had shown this error message, but these players had never actually got to use it. So my hypothesis is that there is some sort of unstated team use limit. So the tip here is to be really mindful to conserve this ability for the most opportune moment, such as capturing the Temple of Tides near the end of the match. And another trick you can do to cut off the flow of reinforcements to the temple is selectively employing that back capture technique behind your enemy's transit hubs. While it is hard to capture both transit hubs at once, sometimes opponents will have tunnel vision on trying to reinforce the temple and the front lines of the transit hubs while neglecting the shrine behind them. In this match, our transit hub was under attack while the enemy's transit hub was only defended by NPC guards. So I advanced my units through to the red player's transit hub. As you can see, enemies are moving right through it without realizing. And once I cleared that transit hub, I immediately abandoned it and pushed to the open shrine behind it, which also only had NPC guards. And again, enemies were going right through the battle to recapture the transit hub I had just left and reinforce the temple. So I told my team on Discord I was doing this and that they would get a temporary reprieve from the constant stream of reinforcements so that they needed to make their move on the temple at that time. Now I couldn't hold it long since I'm not a whale, but even as a low spender I was able to do this micro tactic to disrupt the entire enemy alliance's flow of reinforcements for more than 30 seconds to the temple while getting a ton of personal points off of all these NPC guards. If you see an opportunity like this, it's a chance to make a huge impact, even as a free-to-play player. And the 10th tip for this video is to remember to look beyond the battle at the temple. Ideally, your team has some players trying to make incursions into enemy territory and take their garrison or other key buildings from different routes. You can potentially out-earn a team that is doing a great job holding the center if it comes at the expense of too many other buildings. Again, it's also a good opportunity to ensure you have any last-minute personal points you need to reach that 120,000 point threshold and get the top rank in your reward bracket, irrespective of whatever place you're in. And strategically, this is also where your alliance needs to make some calls if it's playing for first place or second place. You can see how yellow, despite getting significant incursion into their own territory from red, decided to take as much of our blue territory as they could in a chance to try to get second. The gap was too big to overcome, but it was otherwise a good strategy to maximize their potential rewards in that moment, even if it came at our expense. And finally, when all is said and done, the team holding the temple gets the extra 50,000 points, and you can see how it ended up making a difference between first and second place. So if you were that close, you're sort of forced to tunnel vision to the temple in the closing minutes and hope it's not too late for it to change into your hands if you don't have it already. If you lose a garrison with 2 minutes left, it'll only cost you 3,600 points and a captain slot, which wouldn't last much longer anyway. But if you gain the temple, you gain 3,600 points over those 2 minutes, plus the 50,000 ending bonus. So the relative value of the temple increases exponentially as the match draws to a close. So make your decisions accordingly. And again, final warning, make sure you're present at the end of this match for the tally phase, otherwise you don't get any rewards for all the work you just did. If you followed this guide, you should have your personal points taken care of, and maybe even got a frame. I'm not a spender on this game by any means, and I managed to get one, so it's not impossible. Although, I suspect this video may make the competition a little tougher like my Eternity's Reach video did, so sorry in advance. Let me know in the comments if you have any other tricks or techniques that are working for you. It's possible I missed a couple since I only had one playthrough to make this guide. If you found this helpful, then check out the rest of my channel for other in-depth Kingshot videos, and be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and happy gaming out there.